I think we're ready. Mac, you ready?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining this this workshop slash webinar held by us Cargo Base. First of all, I'll start to introduce or say something about Cargo Base. Then I'll say something, introduce myself, and then I'll hand it over to Mac to introduce himself. So thanks again for joining this webinar. It will take about 30 minutes, and during this webinar, we'll show you some great insights in how to measure, manage, and master shipping performance through data. Cargobase is a 10-year-old logistics software company, and we primarily focus on helping large enterprise companies to optimize and automate their current manual processes to manage their logistics processes. We're a global company. We have customers in over 50 countries, and our company itself is over 50 people spread over 6 different offices around the globe. Headquartered in Singapore, where Mac and I are based. Myself, I'm originally from the Netherlands. I've been in logistics for over 15 years. Founded Cargobase 10 years ago, data is very interesting topic because I see and have seen and still see many enterprises, big and small, as well as logistics service providers, who struggle with data and what to do with data. Basically, not having access to data, not having the capability to master the data or manage the data or visualize the data and get the KPIs out of the data that they actually have available to them, as well as, of course, as a result, they don't know how to actually apply it to their business and optimize their supply chain with it. So we've collected in the past 10 years a lot of data, and it's now time for us actually to do something with that data, and also to learn from it and to share the best practices and give tools and opportunities to our customers and suppliers to actually do with this data. And that's therefore we ask Mac Ferguson, our data scientist, to join our team here in Singapore, and he will be leading this webinar today to show you all the cool stuff that we're currently doing here at Cargobase. So Mac, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Wiebe. So I'll shortly introduce myself as well. So I'm recently new to Cargobase, joined about 4 months ago, but have been in the data science space for a lot longer. Initially working in mostly fintech organizations. I recently moved to the logistics field. So what I'm doing is we're looking into the data, both from a shipper's perspective, but also from our LSPs that also use our platform. So we can actually see what we can improve on both sides of our platform. So I think that's where it becomes very interesting. Maybe I just go and start with the first slide, which is actually what we're going to talk about today, the end result of that. So I think we'll do some theoretical thinking, but in the end, we'll want to show what actually the end result is. Dashboards are always nice, but there has to be some thought behind it, and also some mandate from the top to create these visualizations, and also to measure and monitor them. So we're going to talk today about 4 different steps in the data visualization. So we want to go from defining to implementation, and we start actually with the definition, which sounds logical, but it's really important that you focus on KPIs that you want to measure and to improve. If you don't know what your definition of success is, it's very hard to roll out a project. And it also needs to be measurable. So you can have great KPIs, but if they're not measurable, if we cannot see what's happening or cannot look at it historically, then it's quite hard to implement any strategy. So when you have defined and are able to measure your key indicators, you want to analyze them and make sure that you know the root causes and how to improve on those measurements that you are doing. And lastly, what you want to do is to implement your analysis or the results of your analysis. So based on what you're defining, measuring, and analyzed before, you want to do an implementation. And it's important that you also do repetition of this process. So once you have implemented your actionable insight, then you want to measure and continuously improve on that. So today the presentation will talk about each 4 steps, and we'll give some examples of how we see it in Cargobase. So we'll start with the first point, which is defining your key performance indicators. Do you still see my screen? I don't think so. Give me one moment.
Anymore.
Yeah.
Yep, it's back.
Second. Apologies for that.
No worries. While you're sorting it out, basically, also those who are attending, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the QA channel, and then we'll address them at the end of the session.
Okay. Now we're back with the screen, I think.
Yeah, correct. Thank you.
So I've listed down here a few of the indicators that we find important. So you have the financial indicators, you have the operational indicators, and you have some other indicators that also can be important, but are not necessarily categorized directly into one of the first 2. So maybe you can type in a few of the KPIs that you find important in the chat, and I go in 20 seconds. I'll go through what we have listed down here as the key indicators that we can see for the supply chain for shippers. Okay, so we'll start out with the financial indicators. So we have here listed down a few like total GMV, cost per kg, supplier cost variance, cost avoidance, and also platform cost as a percentage of the total volume that you ship in terms of USD. I think it's quite important that you also measure those things. We also have the average cost per shipment, which is quite important if you do a lot of similar shipments in one lane. Then we also have the operational indicators, where the timing of quotation and booking, the time until you get either one of those is important. How many quotes you actually receive, how many shipments you're booking on each location, what freight type, what destinations they are. We have your on-time performance, your quotation percentage per LSP, ranking of LSPs, and the shipment tracking rates. So those are ones that from an operations perspective, we want to have some insights into. And we also have some other indicators that we also have with Cargobase, such as the CO2 reporting, supply chain concentration risks, location dependencies, user satisfaction, because we also believe that the users of the platform that need to do the shipping themselves, need to do the quotation, are also a very important indicator. And lastly, we also have the compliance performance. So we can also see what type of invoices, how long does it take to complete the invoice, what's the difference between the quoted and the invoiced amount. So these are all things that you want to have a look at when you're considering your own supply chain. So from here, we go to the next step, which is actually measuring of those KPIs. So I've simplified it here to 3 steps. So we have the data warehouse, the raw data, the data warehouse, and then we have the access to the data. So I've listed down here a few examples of what kind of raw data Cargobase has, just as like a, kind of a view. So we have the quotation documents from the LSPs, we have external tracking, We have our own cargo-based backend system that does all the quotations and the shipment communication as well. And lastly, we also have the user behavior on the front end, because we also track what features are they using, etc., etc. For the curated data warehouse and also the documentation, it's quite important that you have this, because if you only have the raw data, it's not accessible for each level of your organization. So different functions within your organization will require different KPIs and different granularity of the data. So that's where we actually created the data warehouse, and we documented each of the fields and metrics that are inside, so that everybody within the organization can see what they're trying to do with the data. And the last thing here, what we've listed down, is the accessibility. So within Cargobase, actually, our internal data, we actually allow our customers and our LSPs to extract that data in a few ways. So we have the data extracts from the system to CSV files. We can also do the external connection to APIs, to your own business intelligence software. But we also have our own analytics platform that we also allow both our shippers and our LSP with their own data to play around with. And the last thing that I want to mention here is the permission management. So that's important, that you want to have the people that should have access to the data, have only access to the data that they need to have access to, and not share it with a too large of a group. So in the coming slides, we're going to talk about actually our internal analytics tool that we have available also for our shippers and LSP, and what we think is important for actually now for shippers to look at. I also want to take this moment to say that if there's any questions, or reiterate rather, please ask them in the chat, and we'll get back to them at the end of the presentation. So I think what we have here is 4 of the dashboards that we create for our shippers. So these on the first slide, we have the GMV and volume. So we have the total shipper cost, and we have all the operational data points from a bird's eye view. We also have a tracking analysis, so it shows you the POD tracking at the freight mode level. We have the provider participation reports, and then we have the quotation analysis. And what I'll do in the next slides, I'll go into a little bit more detail on what we see here and why it can be interesting for shippers. So we start off here with the first dashboard that I mentioned. So this one is really to show how your operation is performing. And you can notice here we have a lot of different filters available for you, where you can actually select your booking location, when you created the request, your booking date, your expected booking dates. But you can imagine in our system, we have about 150 dimensions, such as country, region, LSP selected. So you can actually look at all this data from a granularity that you would want to have. So this is a screenshot. So we have our quoted cost, we have our cost avoidance, we have our total number of shipments booked, how many LSPs we have used, and then we have our cargo-based fees as a percentage of your shipper cost. We have a booking rate. So every shipment you create, you can book or you can cancel. So it's actually to see how often you're booking your shipments request. And below where we have the shipment status, we have the GMV and cost avoidance over time, and we have the shipments over time by day, but you can also do it by month or by year, whichever you would like. And below where you have the total lanes that you're doing. So you can see how many shipments you have from, this example is Singapore to Taiwan. But you see all the lanes that you have done historically, you can see below. And we have some costing data for those lanes as well. let's go to the next slide. So as I mentioned before, we have tracking capabilities within Cargobase. So you can actually track all your shipments, containers, flights, and we have a lot of integrations with the main LSPs globally. So we can actually track a lot of the shipments. So we have auto tracking, but we also have the number of updates that you receive per shipments and your POD rate. So you can actually track at the shipment level. Is there a tracker? How many updates have there been? So it gives you really good insight into the visibility of where your shipments are, or where shipments are not being tracked, for example. I think this one is interesting. So Cargobase actually allows you to import your own group of suppliers, and we allow actually to track how they are performing. So you can see we have some mock data here of all the providers or some of the providers that we have, how many times they've been invited to quote, how many times they've quoted, how many times they haven't quoted, their win rate and their losing rate. And then we have the percentage of quotation, and then how long they take to quote. And again, I want to highlight here, you can actually, if you have a lot of locations, you can actually look at per location or even per LSP, what the behavior is like. So you actually have quite a lot of insights into your LSP pool and how they are performing. So you can imagine that it's quite interesting if you have someone that never really quotes when you invite them. You can better probably invite different LSPs that have a higher quota percentage to actually give you more more capabilities, or actually more choice and better prices for the shipments that you're doing. Lastly, we go into the quotation process itself. So this dashboard shows you, well, your average quote amount, your cost per kg, your cost per CBM, again, how many LSPs you have booked, how many LSPs quote per request that you're doing, and then what is the quoting percentage of invitations. So actually 1 in 4 of the invited LSPs quotes in this example. Then we have the freight mode cost, both per CBM and kg. And we have the quotation spread. So the highest bid, the lowest bid, and then the average bid. And then also you can do the bid that you selected. And again, I want to highlight the nice thing is you can also, again, filter on all the filters that you can imagine. I have here a few, but you can add as many as you want over here. So we already can see that there's quite a lot of data coming from the Cargobase system, and this actually will help you quite a lot to go and implement certain changes within your organization. So the last point, the fourth point that I want to go through is how actually do you go from the insights that you have gotten to a implemented effort to improve on those KPIs that you have mentioned. So it's all with the good storytelling with data. So we need to focus on the right message, have a clear narrative, a visual representation, and then the context and the relevance that goes with it, with the problem for the right target audience. Then we want to set certain goals and objectives, how we're going to measure and evaluate, but also who's the accountable and what is the timeline that we want to implement this solution. After that, of course, you want to look at the performance tracking at the set interval. This gives transparency, but also gives the room for continuous improvement. Or if it's not going as you had planned before, you can intervene and recuperate on that. So I wanted to just show you one example of how this would work, for example, in a cargo-based setting. So we see that our spot buy freight at our Singapore location is not getting enough quotes. Actually, it's down with 23% in quotes received. So in January, we actually get almost 3.8 quotes, whereas in May, we're down to only 3 quotes per shipment. And why is that a problem? Because when we're obtaining fewer quotes, it can be more costly, but it also could be potentially challenging for operations because they don't have enough quotes to choose from, so they might not have their preferred timings available. So the next step would be to define clear objectives. So I've put down in the next 3 months, we want to improve our quote requests to from 3 now to 4 in the next month. We can do this by inviting new LSPs and limiting the ones that are slow to respond and don't quote very often. And I will actually be the one that will be the responsible for this project. So yeah, these are the questions that we should be asking. So what can we improve? We can invite more providers, select better providers, and allow for more time. So how will we measure it? So we're gonna look at how many providers are we actually inviting, what is the invited to quote ratio of each of these providers, and how long does it actually take to receive a quote? And we can actually look at that per individual provider. The supply chain manager is responsible, and then the goal and the timeline I've mentioned before. So how do we actually measure and manage it to have a good implementation? One thing is to have the visuals in place, but it's also good to have an on-schedule reporting on the progress of the initiative. So simple reports and dashboard can be created and also disseminated to each one that is involved in the project. So we have the following monitoring tools available. So we have live dashboard, we have weekly summary report. The interval is important. So in this case, it would be weekly. And then the accessibility for everybody that's involved in the project should have access to the right visualizations and updates that are coming along. So I want to recap a bit on what we have discussed today. And I wanted to show this slide again that we started off with. So I want to say that defining and measuring are one of the key things that are often forgotten when we're looking at the problems. We always want to analyze and implement first, but if we don't have step 1 and 2 or the define and measure in place, it'll be very hard to do analyze and implement, because you always need to measure your implementation as well. And if you cannot do that, you're steering quite blind. Now, the nice thing is that at Cargobase, we, for the most part, we already do 1 and 2 for our customers and LSPs. So it actually saves quite a lot of time. And actually, we also have, to a certain extent, done some analysis as well with the dashboards that we have created. And we can do for all our shippers that are customers, give them access to those as well. I think we are coming to the end of the presentation. So maybe we have some questions from the chat, or maybe there isn't any questions, but
yeah, I see here, Max. So I just opened. I think there are 2 questions for now. One of the question is in regards to the data visualization and the graphics that you show, right? The dashboards. This question is, can we only get the data in Cargobase's tool, or can we also get data in our own tool if we use, I think I say PB, I think it's Power BI.
Yeah, definitely Power BI. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that we also realize is that some companies are quite advanced with their analytics. They have a big analytics team and they have already their own tools. So what we do for those companies, we actually have API connections to our data warehouse that has the same data that you can see is behind these visualizations. And what we do is we provide the API access. We also provide the documentation of all the fields and dimensions that you can get from that API. And we also can help to support on certain projects if needed as well. So we do have that, that option available. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The other question was, can Cargobase also help with benchmarking data?
Yes, so that's a question we get a lot. And we are in the process of creating that benchmarking as well. We have a lot of data specifically on certain lanes that our customers are using in our platform. And we're receiving a lot of different quotations for each of those lanes. And at the moment, we're looking into how we can actually better give access to our shippers to those benchmarking data, because we see this is quite a high demand information that's also quite costly if you want to look at it outside at a third-party tool. So this is definitely something that in the coming months or quarters will be rolling out as well for our customers.
Cool. Okay, and there's one more question actually a question that I have. so there might be actually some of the shippers on the webinar right now that use the platform of their logistics service providers, right? So logistics service providers have developed technology where shippers can book shipments, etc. So is it possible for someone who does that currently to use Cargo-Base and then still get access to that same data or even better data?
You mean that if they have their own system?
Yeah, so let's say they use let's say the top 5 big freight forwarders and they currently book directly on their platform. And if they say, okay, we actually want to use Cargo-Base now, can we then still measure the same things that you can currently measure in the providers' platforms?
Yeah, so they should be able to measure exactly the same things. And why I think it's probably interesting if they go via the Cargo-Base option is because we consolidate it. So you don't have to go to 5 different platforms. You just go to one. And we already integrate with most of the global LSPs. So the updates and information that you would get from them, we also have in our platform as well. And you have it consolidated in one place. So I think there shouldn't be any less information coming to you, and actually it should be more consolidated. So actually it would be a lot better to use Cargo-Base, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. There were no other questions. I see nothing. No. Okay. So I think thanks for your input, Mac. I think it's quite resourceful, and I think for those who attended, we can send you a copy of the slides as well as a copy of the recording of the webinar if you want to share that with your colleagues or anything. And if you have any questions, then feel free to reach out to us, to either Mac or myself, and we will be able to help you any questions or any concerns you might have. Okay, exactly in the time. Well done. Thank you so much, Mac, and thanks for those participating. And there are more webinars coming up. I think we're doing almost every week a webinar, different topics. So this was data. I think we're doing on AOG. We're doing on freight invoicing, on procurement. Quite a lot of topics. So do attend if it's within your line of interest. Cool. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.